When reviewing rows of data, it's easy to overlook what needs your attention. Conditional color formatting can draw your eye, telling you whether important things are happening. But color doesn't help you consistently apply your standards for why it matters or what to do about it. For these, you need conditional text. That is, formulas that help you display interpretive guidance to your dataset based on your data values and your processes. In this video, I first provide a guide to using conditional text, including which function to use when. Then I demonstrate how to use these functions and cover how to efficiently combine conditional text with conditional color formatting. Before I begin, let me quickly disclaim that this video is for general information purposes only. Whether you plan to use conditional text in a single workbook, a template, or as part of a general resource, there are 3 guiding questions you need to answer first. When, what, and where. Question 1. When? When should your conditional text be displayed? Here are some things to consider when defining your criteria. Are you checking a single value or a combination of values? Are you looking for thresholds, ranges, or exact values? Do you want to display the same conditional text under all conditions, or different conditional text for different scenarios? Are you monitoring values in a single row, or on the basis of aggregates or calculations across multiple rows? Question 2. What? What text do you want to display when the criteria are met? You want to keep the text relatively short because this is still going into a spreadsheet cell, but long enough to be informational. To help draw the eye the same way that color coding does, I recommend using the empty string when the criteria are not met. This way, by default, your conditional text cells will appear blank unless there's something to pay attention to. Question 3. Where? Where do you want your conditional text to go? Unlike conditional formatting like color coding, which changes the format of your data values in place, you need to add cells to the data view that are specifically for your conditional text. I recommend inserting a table column specifically for this text. That new column could go near the criteria values or at the beginning or end of the row. If you're using Power Query, you can add your conditional text column during the import process. This is especially valuable if you regularly refresh your data and want your conditional text applied every time. So now that you've answered these 3 questions, when, what, and where, what function should you use? Your criteria and related conditional text determine which function best suits your needs. If you're working with a single criterion text pair, such as checking if your value is above a certain threshold, the most efficient way to handle conditional text is with an if function. If you're checking for a combination of criteria that all need to be true in order to trigger your text, such as a value between an upper and lower limit, you can use an if function in conjunction with the and function. If you're checking against a list of possible scenarios where the same conditional text is triggered if any of the criteria are met, such as having different conditions under which you'll cancel a workshop based on whether it's being offered virtually or in person, use an if function in conjunction with the or function. If you're checking against a list of possibilities where the conditional text is different based on which criterion you match against, use an ifs function, that is, plural if with an s. Now, there is a case in which ifs might seem the appropriate choice, but you really need switch. In this case, the conditional text is still different based on which criterion you match against, but now all of your criteria involve an exact match and repeat the same calculation to determine whether a match exists in your data. While ifs can provide the same functionality, switch will give you a performance gain. And with that, you're ready to write your conditional text formulas. If is a good choice when you're working with a single criterion text pair, a combination of criteria that all need to be true at the same time in order to trigger the conditional text, or a list of criteria, any of which could be true to trigger the same conditional text. If takes 3 arguments. Your criteria, which must be specified in a way that evaluates to true or false, what you want to do in the case that your criteria is met or true. For us, that means displaying your conditional text. And then what you want to do in all other cases. That is, when your criteria is not met or false. For us, that means displaying the default text, an empty string, so that the cell will appear blank unless there's conditional text to display. So, playing with a simplified class management scenario, and assuming you want to cancel any classes with a low enrollment of 10 or less, your if statement with its single criterion would read $if, open parenthesis, F2 less than or equal to 10, comma, double quotation mark, cancel hyphen low enrollment, double quotation mark, comma, double quotation mark, close parenthesis. When you apply this approach to a table of data, it helps draw your eye to only those places that need attention. In this case, those ones where you want to cancel due to low enrollment. To extend this example to a combination of criteria, you would replace the single criterion with a call to the AND function. AND takes a comma-delimited list of arguments and returns true only if every argument in the list evaluates to true. So let's assume you want to check for any online lower division classes where the maximum capacity is set to lower than the 50 it should be. Your if statement would read $if, open parenthesis, and, open parenthesis, B2 less than 300, comma, D2 double quotation mark, online, double quotation mark, comma, E2 less than 50, close parenthesis, comma, double quotation mark, increase max capacity to 50, double quotation mark, comma, double quotation mark, close parenthesis. Or works in a similar way, except it evaluates to true if any of the arguments evaluate to true. Assuming, based on course demand, you want to add a section if either the waitlist for a course is greater than 10, or the current enrollment exceeds max capacity by 10, your if statement would read $if, open parenthesis, or, open parenthesis, F2 minus E2 greater than 10, comma, G2 greater than 10, close parenthesis, comma, double quotation mark, add section, double quotation mark, comma, double quotation mark, close parenthesis. Of course, to reflect real-world complexities, you can use any combination of functions and formulas you need for your own criterion specification. Ifs, the plural version of if, is a good choice when the conditional text is different for each of your criteria. Ifs takes a series of pairs of comma-delimited arguments, where each pair consists of one of your criterion and the conditional text you want to display when that criterion is met or true. More explicitly, an ifs statement with 2 criterion text pairs would read $ifs, open parenthesis, your first criterion, comma, double quotation mark, your conditional text to display if your first criterion is met, double quotation mark, comma, your second criterion, comma, double quotation mark, your conditional text to display if your second criterion is met, double quotation mark, close parenthesis. Note that these criteria are evaluated in the order in which you specify them, meaning that ifs will display the conditional text for the first criterion that evaluates to true. So, how do you know which of your criteria to list first? You'll take your cues from both the process you're working to support and computational efficiency, ordering to avoid unnecessary checks and, as possible, to forefront the criteria that's more likely to occur. As an example, using the same class management scenario we used with the if function, you don't want to waste time checking if a class should have a section added if instead it fits the characteristic of a class that should be canceled due to low enrollment. In this scenario, your if statement would first check if the class needs to be canceled and trigger the cancel text accordingly. Then, if it has not been marked for cancellation, check if the class needs to have its max capacity increased and trigger the increased capacity text accordingly. And then, if it's not eligible to have its capacity increased, check if demand for the class indicates a need to have another section added and trigger the add section text accordingly. Now, unlike ifs does not have an else component for what to do if none of the criteria are met. But you can add a final criterion of true associated with the empty string to get the default text behavior you're looking for here. Switch is a good choice when the conditional text is different for each of your criterion, all of your criteria involve an exact match, and all of your criteria require the same calculation to determine whether any of those matches exist in your data. Switch takes 3 types of arguments. The first is the value to switch. For us, this is the calculation you're using to look for matches. Next is a series of pairs of arguments, which consist of the exact value to match against the calculation and the corresponding conditional text you want displayed if the switch value matches this value to match. Note that, unlike if and ifs, which keep your criterion together in the same argument, here you're splitting it up. The last argument to switch is always the value to return if no match is found, which in our case is the empty string. As an example, suppose you're offering a series of professional development courses for your staff, and you want to check whether they've completed the series and been certified, or whether you need to reach out because they still have not started. Your dataset allows you to parse and sum individual course status, with a 15 indicating they're certified and a 0 indicating they haven't started yet. If you were to use ifs for this, you would first check if their series completion status is equal to 15 by calculating the sum of the leftmost character of the status code for each individual course, triggering the certified text accordingly. Then you would check if their series completion status is equal to 0 by again calculating that same sum. But because of how Switch has you specify your criteria, you'll only perform this calculation once, setting the sum calculation as the value to switch. So it's not that you couldn't do this with ifs, but that Switch gives you a performance gain, especially when you're working with a large data set, by reducing the number of times the calculation has to occur. While conditional text can replace conditional color formatting, there's also a good argument for using them together. To do this efficiently, rather than redoing the comparisons and calculations that triggered the conditional text in the first place, you'll apply conditional formatting based on your standardized conditional text values. But that doesn't mean you're stuck coloring the conditional text itself. You can color format other cells in the row by leveraging the fact that the conditional text has been displayed. I'll demonstrate both. To apply conditional formatting to the conditional text itself, first, select the cells of your conditional text column. Then, under the Home tab of the ribbon, select Conditional Formatting, then highlight Cell Rules, then Equal to. In the new pop-up window, tell Excel what text you want to color format. To do this on Windows, use the text box labeled Format Cells That Are Equal to. On a Mac, use the text box following the drop-downs for Cell Value and Equal to. And now, enter the equal sign, then, in double quotation marks, your conditional text string. Set how you want to format the text, such as yellow fill with dark yellow text, and select OK to set the rule. The color formatting will be applied. To apply conditional formatting to other cells in the row, first, select the cells to which you want to apply the color formatting, and then, under the Home tab of the ribbon, select Conditional Formatting, then New Rule. In the new Formatting Rule pop-up window, tell Excel you want to use a formula. To do this on Windows, select your rule type as Use a formula to determine which cells to format. To do this on a Mac, select Classic from the Style dropdown, and from the next dropdown, select Use a formula to determine which cells to format. And now, write a formula to reference the conditional text column and specify the conditional text value it should look for. In my case, my formula would read $$, J2, $, double quotation mark, cancel, hyphen, low enrollment, double quotation mark. Note that I do not have a $sign in front of the 2, so that Excel can modify that row appropriately as it applies the conditional formatting down the table. Next, set how you want to format the text, such as yellow fill with dark yellow text, and select OK to set the rule. The color formatting will be applied. To recap, you've learned how to use conditional text to do 2 things. First, draw the eye to important places in your data. You do this by strategically using blank cells as your default text, so it's easy to spot the conditional text when it pops up. Optionally, you can combine it with conditional color formatting to either color the conditional text itself or other relevant cells in that row. Second, to better support your processes and decision making. You do this by writing your conditional text in a way that tells people why the data needs attention and, as applicable, what action they might need to take as a result. This is a benefit not only when you delegate your spreadsheet tasks, but also when you need to remind yourself because you don't use the spreadsheet frequently enough to remember off the top of your head. And you learn how to do this with everyday Excel functions, if, ifs, and switch, so that it's easy to use conditional text yourself and to explain it to others. And now it's your turn. How will you use conditional text in your own workflows? If this video helped you, drop a comment below and let me know. If you've still got questions or are interested in additional help with a data project, reach out to me, Barbara Olsavsky, the owner and data strategist at Blou Designs LLC, on LinkedIn or at bloudesigns.com. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone else who needs it. Thank you for watching.